Retired Deputy Justice Dikgang Moseneke is in Lesotho for the wrap-up consultation meeting ahead of the 41st SADC summit in Malawi in the next 2 weeks. Moseneke says while SADC is experiencing pockets of instability in the region, Lesotho will table a positive progress report this time around.
SADC is going through a very difficult time itself with Swaziland and Mozambique and so on. So the question becomes quite important. And the developments here, because this is a success story. And it's a story that therefore should relieve them over time of intense facilitation and scrutiny, and therefore a saving of resources.
Following a turbulent era in both political and military instability in Lesotho, the regional body SADC recommended an overhaul reforms process.
It is crucial because we're getting to the zenith, to the top. You know, Lesotho know a lot about mountains and their tops. So we have done extremely well. There will be work after these have been introduced to Parliament, debate and discussion and adoption. And the main target, Yaruna, is to have all these adopted before the elections. So that the elections, and the obvious question from countries around the region will be, Basotho Bahokai, how far are they with the reforms? And we should be able to, if what we have promised comes out in the light of day, here's the omnibus bill. And those will be there in black and white for all of you to see. And that is what we have to hold out to SADC.
SADC facilitator to Lesotho, President Cyril Ramaphosa, will present the final progress report on Lesotho reforms scheduled for Lilongwe in Malawi on the 17th and 18th August 2021. Meanwhile, the Kingdom of Lesotho has demonstrated a state of readiness to deploy its standby force to assist in Mozambique soon.
We love you! We love you!
Rapelang Radebe, SABC News, Maseko, Lesotho.
Well, to discuss these latest developments, we're now joined by our correspondent in Lesotho, Rapelang Radebe. Rapelang, we heard there from the former Deputy Chief Justice, and he seems optimistic that Lesotho will definitely come up with a good story to tell to SADC when they meet. From what you've seen, is there a basis for this optimism?
Indeed, Peter, evening to you. I think he's quite optimistic. Speaking to him this afternoon, he was more in high spirits. Lesotho has been quite a challenging exercise for the past 2 years. I think even more with the president, when he was still Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. Lesotho's journey has just been an ups and downs. But I think with the wrapping up of the reforms process coming to effect, there is some optimism. One quick low-hanging fruit that one can refer to could be relating to when they changed the rules in Parliament that every time the Prime Minister has a vote of no confidence, they should go to elections. That is no longer the case. It means the government is now guaranteed a 5 full-year tenure without going to Lesotho as frequent as it used to.
All right, you've mentioned one reform, but perhaps let's give our viewers a little bit of a context and take us back to, I remember having conversations about the army fighting the police and the political parties being more at war than they were about discussing politics and trying to work for the citizens. What was fundamentally wrong at the time that required this massive intervention?
Yes, Peter, you're absolutely correct. Remember, where we are is as a result of the SADC intervention. What had transpired? Lesotho had gone to elections like twice in a space of 5 years. There had been 2 army commanders that were killed in a space of around 2 years. So the politicians, the military, the relationships not as good as, and mostly the military complaining that the so-called powerful politicians tend to meddle with the army to pursue their personal interests. So SADC actually suggested, after formulation of the Pumapi Commission, decided that there should be an overhaul, the reforms, starting from the judiciary, the parliamentary, from the justice system, media. There's about 7 thematic of them that has been suggested as the key and thematic one, from how you deploy your politicians into the workforce of the government. So I think those are the key areas that said they can bring some stabilities if they don't have too much political influence when it comes to implementation. Maybe then Lesotho can have a bit of stability.
We've seen quite a number of shifts, twists and turns in the politics inside the country, the ruling party, the governing party, change of hands in terms of leadership. Has that helped to get the country to where it is now? Because in the past, one got a sense that there were a few dominant characters that pretty much run everything.
Absolutely. Take a clear example for now. If it was according to the previous arrangement, the current Dr. Majoro, he would probably have been kicked out by now. And chances are the country would have gone to elections. They are trying to curtail some of those powers because politicians, every time they see an opportunity to jump into power, they will do everything. But now knowing that, look, whatever happens, you will stay in that office, at least there is some security. Therefore, chances of destabilizing everything at an expense of a few people attaining power is sort of limited or curtailed, because it's a very small pie when it comes to economic activity. Therefore, if the government is the only one that is able to have access to give source to living, it becomes a big destabilization to ordinary people. Nothing functions.
And the politicians seem then to have decided to come together to find a solution and get these reforms. And the former Deputy Chief Justice looked like he had a lot of work to do, but he seems to have done a great job.
Look, it was quite interesting to observe some of the things. He had to be very heavy-handed at times, and some of them even calling him a dictator. But sometimes I think the experience of him as a judge was able also know how to hit the right buttons. There is still one slightly, I don't know, I'll call it a questionable one as to how he's going to maneuver when it comes to, there's a bill that is called Transitional Justice Bill, of which many, maybe rightfully so, are complaining that it is just a passage for prominent, powerful politicians to escape not accounting for the deaths of so many people that died in their hands, having too much power. Now they say this bill is going to be used for them to go without impunity.
All right, I suppose the solution must be found there, but what does all of this mean for a sustainable future for Lesotho? It's great to have these agreements in place, but it was 5 minutes ago that, soldiers were on the street pretty much running things and the police fighting them.
Look, most of this military influence, as if one would say, were mostly in the pockets of these very politicians. But I think there is a sense of stability that their autonomy and their independence is sort of guaranteed, knowing that it's not easy for politicians to meddle in their affairs. If you look at right now how stable things have been, I think with the current commander having full control, you hardly see military now actually getting involved in issues of politicians or even being subjected to any of those. These are things that have made Basotho to question some of the things. Look, this kind of reforms have gone to an extent of even questioning the legitimacy of His Majesty the King, the role he should play, to what extent should Lesotho be. So I think this kind of discussions have opened up a lot of the post-colonial independence of questions that have really never been asked. And I think this is the time.
So what happens after the SADC meeting? There'll be a report tabled. Then what?
Good. It's a good question. Look, SADC was insisting on one particular thing. After the Pumapi Commission says these reforms that have been suggested by a formal commission of Pumapi, they should be implemented and implemented fully. So I think they are saying now, before the elections, Lesotho goes to elections next year, they need assurance and guarantee that these reforms will be in effect, such that by the time the next coming elections, these reforms are actually practical. Then we can actually weigh and judge as to the stability of Lesotho going forward. So I think going to this meeting, President Cyril Ramaphosa will actually be tabling a report that says these have been presented before Parliament. They have been adopted as one bill that can actually entail all of them. We know that now it becomes law. These outstanding things. We know that it will no longer be easy for politicians to use those gaps to get away with, things that can lead to instability in Lesotho.
Rapelang, thank you so much indeed. Your insights always greatly appreciated, and we certainly hope that the next time we talk, you'll be able to take that guitar off the fireplace there and play a song for us of celebration.
It's good times. I'm looking forward. I'll play a tune or two.
Thanks so much, Rapelang. All right, that's where we're going to leave that story. But it does seem very positive, a great story, hopefully playing out and being told about Lesotho finally resolving its problems. Stay with us. You're watching The Globe on SABC News.